coming up in this episode of Professional Jealousy.
I'm not going to just die quietly in the corner while I know that I could be doing much better things. It really took me 5 years and more than 5 doctors and starting Alloy to even get my own care. One doctor said to me, "There is no money in menopause, so the research hasn't been done. I don't know. I can't answer your question." You can sort of expect that at any time that you have an idea, 10 plus people around the world are having the exact same idea at the same time.
Hello, I'm Natasha Jakubowski, and this is my podcast, Professional Jealousy, where I talk to people I'm impressed by and, yes, just a little bit envious of. Today, I'm talking with Monica Molenaar, co-founder and co-CEO of Alloy Health, a digital health company focused on women's health, inspired by her own personal journey. Hello. I'm so grateful that you could be on here. I do a lot of work in kind of healthcare and women's health, and so I've obviously known Alloy for a while, and it's a fascinating space. For anyone that doesn't know the brand, can you give us a quick elevator pitch?
Sure. So think of Alloy as sort of your digital concierge doctor designed specifically to enable midlife women to thrive. So we offer access to really good, credible information, fantastic doctors who are all menopause experts and really mission driven to treat women in midlife. And direct, easy, convenient access to the prescription solutions that women are looking for and need in order to thrive from here forward, whether that's menopausal hormone treatment or other things for weight, skin, sexual health, gut health, other things that we are all kind of struggling with and want to improve in midlife.
Amazing. You're very open in the press on your website about the kind of aha moment about finding out about the BRCA gene. Can you talk a little bit about that? And I mean, I know quite a few women that have had a similar experience, but you actually, it created this moment, this aha moment. Like, I'd love to hear a little bit about why you started Alloy and the experience of that such important kind of finding.
Yeah. Well, I always was actually treated as if I had the BRCA gene because my mother and my grandmother both had breast cancer very early, and neither of them died from it, and lived many, many more years, decades after their breast cancer. So it wasn't something that I was really terrified of, but it was something that I had been kind of managing from the time that I was 25. And when I was about to turn 40, Angelina Jolie wrote her op-ed about her experience having BRCA and making it her decision to have a preventive mastectomy and ovarectomy. And at the time, as I said, I was 39. I had 2 children already. I made the decision that it probably would be wise to at least have my ovaries removed because my grandmother's breast cancer had also spread to her ovaries. And, I had 2 small children. It wasn't something that I was interested in dealing with. And really all anybody told me of the doctors that I had, the surgeons, my OBGYN, everybody only talked to me about the end of my fertility and not having more kids, but no one ever mentioned that I was going into menopause the next day and how to manage it. So it really took me 5 years and more than 5 doctors and starting Alloy to even get my own care under control and sort of, on a set it and forget it kind of trajectory, and to really understand what had happened and what I was going through and why I needed certain treatments but nobody explained it to me. Yeah. And I just kept going to doctor after doctor. I'm a sort of a relentless problem solver, which I think is also part of why I'm a good entrepreneur. Because, I take information and then I act on it or I digest it and, sort of keep trying to find and solve the problem. And I was sitting in the middle of New York City. My father is a doctor there. I had kind of every resource available and I still really couldn't find the help that I needed. And so in the meantime, I started another business, which is going to be celebrating its 10-year anniversary next week, which is exciting. But so I sort of started to get my entrepreneurial chops going But in the meantime, I was still really dealing with and struggling with my own menopause. And at a certain point, when it was time for me to sort of move on from the business that I had started with a couple of partners in 2016, um, I was like, what is the biggest problem that I want to solve here? Where do I think that there's a lot of white space? What does the world need? And at that moment, I really thought women need help in menopause because this shit is crazy. If you don't know what's going on, like the answers that I would get from doctors, like I would ask questions, and literally one doctor said to me, there is no money in menopause. So the research hasn't been done. I don't know. I can't answer your question. And I just thought that is not something that I can
Yeah.
accept.
Just quickly, what was your first startup?
My first startup was called Seed and Mill. It's it's a food business based in Chelsea Market in New York City. And it's all based on sesame. So tahini and halva, which is
Yeah,
a
I think
sweet
I know that.
treat made
Okay.
from sesame paste, made from tahini actually.
Yeah.
And it really sort of took off as a small cult food brand, and it was very exciting and fun to work on, but very, very different from what I'm doing right now.
Very different. And so silly question, you've gone from food to regulated, very different space. Like, I know this sounds silly, but like literally, how did you go about starting? Like, what were the first steps that you made? Was it to find your co-founder? Was it to like what were your first steps to creating Alloy?
I mean, the first step is really just thinking about coming up with a vision or an idea of like this is a problem that needs to be solved, and then figuring out kind of the ways to start talking about it. And actually, I started to talk to a lot of people, and lots of different people in different areas. Some doctors, some former entrepreneurs. My initial thought actually was, how do you eat for menopause and not gain 20 pounds like I had done? So I was really trying to lose the weight and sort of keep it off, and this was obviously well pre GLP-1s.
Pre-GLP-1s.
Yeah. And so I was really struggling with my weight and feeling very bad about it and feeling, upset. And so, but I also didn't really know at that time all of the connections between menopause and estrogen and weight and all of the other things that happen to your body, as you age. I did by that point already have a prescription for menopausal hormone treatment, but it was inconsistent. And so I was sort of all over the place for 5 years. But really after speaking to a lot of people, it all kind of coalesced when I met my partner, my co-founder, Anne Fullenwider, who at the time was the editor-in-chief of Marie Claire magazine. And I met her sort of socially. We were both on vacation in the same small town in the North Fork of Long Island, and she looks very much like me and had the exact same puppy, essentially. And I kept running into her and thinking like, I eventually went up to her and I said, I think we should be friends because we have kids the same age and we have these two puppies, and like, I'm going to walk the dog at 6:30 tomorrow morning. Would you like to join me? And she did. And so for the next week or so, we started walking the dogs every morning, and just, as women do, talking about all the things that you're going through in your life in your mid 40s, and, whether it's careers or children or health and parents aging and all those things, we kind of hit every topic. And by the end of the after the summer ended and all the kids had gone back to school and stuff, I reached out to her and I said, I have an idea. I think that you should quit your job and we should fix menopause. And, we kind of met a couple of times. We didn't really have any idea how we were going to do that. But one thing led to another. And this is sort of also, I think, where it's important for people who are thinking
Yeah.
about founding a business or getting into entrepreneurship, like talk as much as possible to as many people as you
Yeah.
possibly can, and things will start to take shape. And you'll have a lot of conversations that won't go anywhere, but some will. And that's what's important. So just don't stop talking. And eventually we had a few conversations, and then she was actually introduced through her work to someone named Encore Jane, who became our first investor. He was a 29-year-old guy at the time. Now he's in his mid 30s. And he was talking about, he's an investor, and was talking about his interest in businesses that have some sort of friction or shame associate,
Yeah.
like, are solving a problem that has some sort
Yeah.
of friction or shame. And she and life stage businesses. And she said, "What
Yeah.
about menopause? Nobody's talking about that." And he said, "I've been looking for a menopause company
Yeah.
and there
Yeah.
aren't any." And so, she was like, "Well, my friend Monica wants to start one. We should have a conversation." And that's really how it started. And basically, he was like, "I'll give you guys some money." We really needed something concrete in order for
Yeah.
Anne had a full-time job at that point that she was leaving, and I was obviously an entrepreneur, so I was a little bit more flexible. But what was great was that he really thought, that we would be a great team to
Yeah.
tackle this problem. And so he was like, "I'll give you some money to kind of figure it out." And that was 7 years ago. And they've
I mean,
continued to be our investors.
yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I love just the serendipity of it all. You
Yeah.
meet someone randomly, become friends, and you meet an investor. I mean, it sounds pretty magical.
I mean,
Any
it's a lot of serendipity and also
crossword.
like seeing opportunities and
Yeah.
going for it. So for example, like in that period, I obviously shortened it, but there were like other things that happened. There were like,
Yeah.
times that he said, "Hey, I'm going to be at this party." And like I ended up going alone. Anne was busy. Like I didn't really want to go, but I went because you need to keep the conversation
Yeah.
going. And if you lose momentum or you don't seem interested or excited or engaged, then other people won't either. So it all really goes back to, I think, partially my experience as an entrepreneur has been like, don't be afraid to talk about your ideas. No one's
Yeah.
going to steal them. Or if they do, then good for them because they executed better than you could. But it really comes down to, can you execute on something? And there's a lot of effort and relationship management and nurturing and development that goes into these serendipity moments. But if you're there, then it can happen. And
Yeah.
I think that's something I've really learned.
Yeah, there's a couple of things you said there. Like one thing is, it's interesting. I'm working with a founder at the moment who is worried about someone stealing their idea. Um, and it's hard because, you need to share what this idea is. Um, I love your thought about, well, if someone else takes it and does it better. But I mean, like, how did you sound like you're much more kind of talk out the idea, start forming it and evolving it and getting people excited. Like, what advice do you have for founders worried about, giving too much away? Like, talk to me about how they should kind of free up their thinking and be a little more confident, I guess. Or do you just use an
Well,
NDA? I mean, that's the other. I keep wondering about
no,
all these founders trying to get people to sign NDAs before they even share anything.
yeah,
It's hard.
no, I don't, I mean, we hardly, every once in a while we'd have somebody sign an NDA, but really, like, ideas are a dime a dozen, and you
Yeah,
really can expect, and this is something that I've learned and seen when I'm like, wait, how is it, that sentence that I was just thinking, somebody else just wrote that down, the exact words, so you can sort of expect that at any time that you have an idea, 10 plus people around the world are having the exact same idea at the same time. And it really does come down to, do you care about that idea? Is that something that you want to work on? Is
yeah,
that something that you have the expertise to work on? Can you find the people who have the expertise? Can you find the money to do it? Like all those, there are lots of steps to being an entrepreneur, but I think that sharing the idea is the least risky, actually. Like that's, and for the most part, my experience has been that when you share your idea, people are either excited to work with you on it, or sort of want to, or give their advice or walk away or whatever. But
was it?
I've really never seen an example in my own experience of somebody taking an idea and
Yeah,
actually like going for it. So I think the risk is very low. It's amplified in our minds,
yeah,
but it's not what I would worry about.
yeah. And interestingly, so my day job is uh, head of innovation. I literally work with massive like P&G, Unilever, all these companies, and I can tell you, I've created many menopause ideas and business, and really, ideas are easy. It's
Yeah.
actually making them happen
It's
is much harder.
And I
Um,
think the other part of it, just to finish the answer, is
yeah,
don't be afraid to make mistakes. Expect that you will make
yeah,
mistakes and expect that things will go wrong, or that, you'll go down a path and you might need to sort of pivot a little bit or massage it, but it's how you learn from those mistakes and how you take the information and use it. That's where the magic happens. And that's, I think, where, sometimes it looks like serendipity, or it looks like,
Yeah.
this was, whatever, but there's a lot of hard work and a lot of effort and kind of determination that goes into
Are there
following along an idea.
any mistakes that you can think of that were, you know, t- terrible, but actually useful in the long run?
I mean, I can't, everything that we've done, we've had all kinds of things go right and go wrong.
Yeah.
Usually on the same day. Anne and I always laugh that the worst day is always the best day, and vice versa. Like it just kind of happens like that. But I think that, one, I'm very, very happy with where I am right now, with the business, with my life, with, and so I can't really say that there's anything that was tragic, because if, I took all of the mistakes, or all the things that, didn't, I'm not even necessarily thinking that mistakes in terms of poor choices, but sometimes there's a lot of stuff out of your control. Or, for example, we started down the path, years ago. Before we launched, we spent almost 2 years working with a partner that definitely was not the right partner. That was actually a telehealth partner. Then we also worked with a technology company that built our entire back end, and we worked with them to sort of build the back end, and they went out of business overnight. And then we had to rebuild the entire thing ourselves within 2 months. And we had already launched by that point. So without, we didn't want to kill the business either, or sort
Yeah.
of lose the customers that we already had. So there's all kinds of stuff that like just always has to kind of get worked on. And you may choose, as a business evolves, you may choose partners at one point that aren't the right partners, going forward. So being able to really look with kind of objective eyes at decisions that you've made, and be able to say, this isn't the right decision anymore, or we need to move, we need to choose somebody else, or this person isn't right for the job anymore, for this stage of the business. As the business scales, what I think has been really interesting, and this has been definitely different in my experience with Alloy than with Seed and Mill, because it's a different scale and
Yeah.
sort of opportunity in a sense. But the people at the beginning, like we've had, it's like a movie credits, basically, of people who have been involved in Alloy at different times. And the people at the beginning aren't necessarily the right ones for it now,
Yeah. So
and
what
so
sort of
we've had to.
people do you need at the beginning versus when you're now 7 years on, more established? Like, talk to me about the kind of the change.
Well, we have almost 50 people working for us now. And so, at a certain point, the roles and responsibilities become a lot more defined, I think, and you need real expertise. We started, for example, our advertising efforts with essentially, like, he was great at the moment, but it was like a guy in a garage who was doing
Yeah.
our media buying, and at a certain point that just doesn't, it's not okay anymore. You need more sophisticated tools, or you need more business intelligence. Like, for the first several years, we didn't have any data analytics. So
Yeah.
we were kind of shooting in the dark and just making decisions based on feel, or what we thought, would be right. But we didn't have the money or the resources to be able to be more data driven in our decision making. So, we've been able to really add people with very specific expertise as we've grown, which we wouldn't have been able to attract those types of people. We have a CTO now. Like, we couldn't have had it. We were too small to have a CTO
Yeah.
at a certain point. Our first developer, who's still with us, I think he was 20 when he started. And, I love him, and he's been great. But some of his references, one of his references was literally his middle school coding teacher. But, he did what he did. He got the job done, and he was really perfect. But now we've had
Yeah.
to obviously build around him
Professionalism.
and over him, and stuff like that. So it's, some people just couldn't move as quickly as we needed to, or, there are all kinds of reasons why some people might not be right going forward, lack of interest or whatever.
Yeah. I think it's super interesting, like thinking about the space you're in. I mean, I think health and wellness is super dynamic, but actually, you know, I think the growth of it went from period care to, things like menopause became a big kind of focus within healthcare. Um, so you've gone through that kind of, you're on the rise of that. And then obviously things like whether it's gut health and microbiomes and hormones and now GLP-1s. So talk to me about how the business or your vision for the brand and the business has evolved and how you kind of course correct. Like what would you look back and think about how it's changed? Like what are the key evolutions of the brand and the business?
Well, I think from the beginning, the way that we've thought about kind of the product rollout is what's the biggest problem in the space right now? And there were a few when we started. One was just utter lack of validation of women
Yeah.
and menopause and what they were going through from the medical world and doctors, from other women, from just people generally. It's like, what what's
Yeah.
the problem? So you're
Yeah.
tired, so you didn't sleep well last night, so you gained some weight. Who cares? Like, this is it, this is aging, so your skin
Yeah.
is wrinkling. Like, get over it, deal with it. And one, that's not an answer that I can live with, at this age. Like, I'm not going to just like die quietly in the corner while, I
Yeah.
know that I could be doing
Massive
much
job to be
better
done.
things. Yeah, and I'm 51, as I keep saying it. I'm literally in the best shape of my life. I'm in way better shape than I was when I was in my 30s and 40s. I'm way happier. I'm really sort of doing I'm at the top of my game in a way that, I'm really kind of using the experience, the lived experience that I've had thus far, and using that to inform how I want to live the rest of my life going forward. And I have as many years potentially in front of me as I've had up until
Yeah.
now. So that's sort of my own personal feeling. And that has informed really how we kind of have evolved the business, which is solve the biggest problem first. That is that in menopause, women were not getting access to menopausal hormone treatment,
Yeah.
estrogen and progesterone, and also testosterone, but that's a kind of a different story. The biggest lack of access was to estrogen itself. And it is the key to solving not only menopause, but really helping women prevent future chronic disease. We know that it is hugely cardioprotective. It's anti-inflammatory. Like it saves your skin. It saves your
Bones.
bladder. It prevent your bones, your brain, your heart. Prevents diabetes and colon cancer and like all. I mean, it is really, really
Yeah.
helpful and something that women should have. And prior to 2002, when there was a horrible study that came out
Yeah.
called the Women's
Yeah.
Health Initiative that horrible in the sense that it was very expensive, and the conclusion that was drawn was wrong, or the conclusion that was amplified was not the conclusion that actually you would find even in the study itself. And that basically was like women shouldn't take estrogen because it's going to cause breast cancer.
Breast cancer.
That's not
Yeah.
true. In the meantime, in the last 23 years, as women have not been given access to estrogen, the rates of breast cancer and all of the other diseases that we just mentioned have skyrocketed. And so preventing women from having estrogen has not been helpful. But only 2%, or between 2 and 5% of women in the United States and around the world are being, because this was also a problem that
Yeah. Global.
extended globally, um, have been given access to menopausal hormone treatment. And so that was really the first thing that we started with, like solve the pain and the real big problem, which is women are not being validated and given access to the right thing.
Yeah.
Once you solve the pain, then you can start to spark the joy, as we say, and help women thrive. So, the key is estrogen. And then beyond that, there's your weight, there's your skin, which we have really pioneered the use of topical estrogen for skin health, which has been really, really exciting and gratifying. But skin, weight, sexual health, hair, all the things that women are struggling with, and sort of there are many, many solutions that are just sort of out of reach
Ooh,
for the average woman.
for some reason it says it's stopped recording.
No, not for me.
Oh no, for Randy. Sorry. Okay.
Oh,
Ignore me. Ignore me. I think
okay.
she's dropped off. But yeah,
Okay.
sorry. Okay, just
No
checking.
worries. We can edit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Um,
yeah.
I forgot what I was saying.
All the benefits of estrogen, etc. I think was where you're going, and I love. I mean, I think one of the things that I've done a lot of work in skincare as well, but the whole using the topical estrogen at a lower level for skin health, anti-aging, etc. Uh, were you one of the first people doing that?
I think we were the
Yeah.
first to really popularize it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Should I be
it's
using should I be using the estrogen cream on my feet?
100%. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yeah, and in fact, like, really the time to start is in perimenopause or sort of mid-30s, like, as you start to notice your skin changing a little bit, or even
Yeah.
post-pregnancy,
Yeah.
that's a very low estrogen state as well, and your skin can dry out and get thinner, and what we've seen both in the 5 clinical studies that we've done through Alloy through with independent labs, as well as just, research on topical estrogen, out there is that estrogen, it's so smart. So it's actually really preventative in it's prophylactic in perimenopause, so it will prevent your skin from starting to age, and really what's happening with aging and thinning and drying and sort of that loss of elasticity is that estrogen is what is responsible for hydrating cells, for inducing your body to create collagen and
Mhm.
elasticity in the skin. It's thickness, it thickens the skin. And so as you lose estrogen, your skin just naturally gets drier and sort of more fragile.
Yeah.
But if you think about the fact that your skin is actually your largest organ and what is here to protect us from all the outside elements and, sort of keep everything else safe, you
Yeah.
want your skin to be as
A barrier.
healthy as possible. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so estrogen is really like a game changer in terms of um, your skin's overall health. The side benefit is that it also makes your skin look much younger and more just healthy
Yeah.
and kind of radiant, because it's hydrated, because it has collagen and is thicker. And so the really nice side effect is that I get compliments all the time now on my skin, which I never got before. And so, as a 51-year-old woman, it's pretty nice.
Yeah, yeah. I'm like,
For
well,
people to be like, "You look
I
amazing.
know. I'm like,
Thank
I
you
probably
so
should
much."
have started earlier, but we'll see.
It's
Um,
okay. It's never too late. So it's
no,
prophylactic in
okay.
perimenopause, and it's therapeutic in menopause, which means it will prevent your skin from sort of, aging in if you get it at the right time, but it will work at any time, which is also the same for vaginal estrogen as well. And it
Yeah.
works on the same principle. It's skin. So that's something that women should know is like essential skincare and something that you can and should use forever and can start whenever and no matter what cancers you have or whatever, like it is pretty much safe for everybody.
Yeah. And that goes for the same with the estrogen, progesterone, and if you're just coming to Alloy, what are the kind of main things that a woman in menopause will be kind of,
May get.
yeah,
Well, one thing I want to say is that one of our kind of principal tenets at Alloy is that women are very smart and can make decisions, or at least, for themselves, or at least should be a part of the decision making process. And
yeah,
so we like to make, I think one of the things about Alloy is we're very transparent and open about what we have available, how much it costs. We don't force you to go through insurance. You don't need to go into a doctor's office. You don't need to be in front of a video screen and have a 7-minute conversation or 15 minutes or, whatever it is. It's when you come to Alloy, you get connected with a menopause specialist who is, sort of like a specialist in your pocket, and you have unlimited access to this same doctor for as long as you are a customer of Alloy
yeah,
and getting something from Alloy. So you can ask your questions whenever you have them. The doctor, 99% of them are women, so most likely she will get back to you within 12 hours and answer your question. And this is something that really does not exist in the in-person world, even in the telehealth world where you have to, generally kind of keep making appointments
yeah,
or, just get a copay. So We really wanted to make it easy for women to get access to the care that they're looking for. I think I was so long in that
Yeah, no,
that
that's
answer.
I'm interested in this business wise. You kind of obviously the focus on women, the focus on menopause um is is great, and you know you have your addressable market. Um, and do you fit in between things like a parsley, like, or do you replace like a concierge kind of more space or an OBGYN? Like, how do you, or you complement those
I
businesses?
think well we complement an OBGYN, an in-person
Yeah,
OBGYN where you would be getting a
like your
pap
pap
smear and
smear.
and but what we do so I what we do offer is really expert doctors who understand midlife women
Yeah,
or perimenopausal women in this transition. Most of them are OBGYNs. We have a few urogynecologists, maybe one urologist, but doctors who really have seen women for decades
yeah,
through this life stage and really understand what they're going through. And I think, you know, menopausal hormone treatment is just one of many. And an alloy, the definition of alloy, the reason why we chose our name is that an alloy is a combination of elements for strength and protection against
yeah.
corrosion, which is
Amazing.
really kind of a metaphor for everything that we do. So that's
Everything
why
that
we
happens
have
to a female body.
exactly, exactly. And so it's not just about estrogen. It's, as I said, it's weight care, it's
Yeah,
skin care, it's sexual health, it's gut health. There are lots of things. And so when a woman comes to Alloy, she can sort of ask for a more doctor-led experience where she says, here are all the problems that I'm having. Can you please give me a treatment plan that's personalized to what I am experiencing and what I would like to solve? And then she can work with the doctor to and go back and forth as many times as she needs to ask her questions without paying additional fees to get as many of the things that I just
yeah,
mentioned as she wants.
yeah,
She can start with menopausal hormone treatment. She can start with skincare. She can start with GLP-1. She can start with, and then she can add on, or she can sort of move around as in consultation with the doctor as she moves forward in her own path. And
yeah,
so we like to give women the opportunity just to be led by the doctor or to say, this is what I'm looking for,
yeah, yeah,
and here are the symptoms that I'm having, or here's my medical history. And then the doctor can write the prescription or say, and this happens also, like, I don't think that this is the right thing for you. Maybe, maybe something else. But for the most part, like with the topical estrogen skincare, pretty much anybody can use
yeah.
it if they want to. So, if you want to make that choice, you can, and we are here to give women that agency.
Yeah. What do you make of, I mean, like, it's interesting, and, I think it's fueled by the GLP-1 gold rush. But, like, my med spa now offers GLP-1s, HRT. Like, it's pretty, we've gone from, you know, nothing to suddenly all of these things being available everywhere. Like,
Yeah.
what do you make of this
I
happen?
mean, I think that that's why we have really been very deliberate about wanting doctor care and really only having very experienced, um, really mission driven and aligned doctors who have been caring for women for decades and who want to, most of our doctors are really at a point in their careers where they have aged up with their patients and are going through this themselves and don't want to be on call delivering babies overnight. And so this provides them with a really fantastic way to kind of amplify their expertise across a much broader group of women and really provide the access that they have seen is broken and missing because they all of them have been in-person care and have kind of seen the transition also to health systems and sort of away from like actually really serving women and their needs. And so this is really a way to connect women directly to the doctor, which almost never happens in real life anymore. You see some deputy of the doctor and maybe you get a few minutes with the doctor, but like if you have another question, you're never getting back to that same doctor again.
Yeah.
And I think that's a real problem. And this is, sort of a really innovative way to provide that kind of personal connection and care that's ongoing and can be ongoing for years. The beauty of this actually is that the doctors that work for us are so happy working at Alloy and have had such a great experience that we have zero doctor attrition. So we keep adding
Wow.
doctors as our
Amazing.
volume grows, and none of them leave.
Yeah.
So it's been years already that, these doctors are on the Ally platform. They have, so many thousands of patients also that they've seen over time or communicated with, that they also, like, their expertise has only really broadened and developed as they've kind of seen more and more women. But I think that, I- everybody's different. I'm glad that there's access to all of these solutions, and I'm certainly glad that that we've been successful in um, getting the story out, that or the facts out, that estrogen is something that women deserve access to and should have the right to choose. Um, I don't know that I would just take it from anywhere. Like, I have tried every single type of menopause of estrogen, every form factor. I've had pellets, I've had compounded systemic hormones, I've had, just FDA approved regular
Yeah.
generic, the pill, the patch, the gels, the
Yeah.
sprays. I've tried literally everything. At the end of the day, my choice is an oral estradiol and a micronized progesterone. But it all works. It's all the same. I just think that, there's a lot of misinformation. There are a lot of people who really don't understand also women's the the health journey that they've had up until this point. And so to have a doctor who has experience in, talking to you about, like, whether it's your uncontrolled diabetes or other things that you might need to have help with, and really sort of expert answers about, that's where we step in.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, yeah. Every time I see the single injection that you can get it, like some star, I'm like, this is crazy. Just
Yeah, yeah.
buying one off thing.
I
Um,
th- yeah, everybody has their own sort of personal risk profile, and I'm willing to push boundaries, but I think, for the most part it's important to really um or I'm willing to push boundaries for myself. As I said, everybody's different, but I
yeah.
think, giving access to real expertise and solutions that work and that you can stand behind, that are evidence-based and grounded in science and good studies, and, that's what's really important.
Yeah. Looking back, is there anything that you would do differently if you were starting Alloy today? I know the market is so different. Consumers are a lot
Yeah.
more, um, I think they're a lot more uh, educated or aware. The black box has been removed from HRT. Like,
Hallelujah. Yeah.
yeah. Looking back, what would you do differently, or what do you wish you had known then?
Well, it's always an interesting question when people ask me that, because I'm very, very pleased with where we
Yeah.
are, and so I don't think that I could have done anything
Yeah.
differently to reach the same outcome. If you do something differently, then you get to a different outcome, and I don't
Yeah.
know what that would be. And so, while, as I said, there have been many things along the last 7 years that, went awry,
Yeah.
or launches, technology that we thought was just like launches that didn't go as planned, or that needed, that had all kinds of bugs or whatever. Like, the only way sort of forward is through it.
Yeah.
And I think I'm really pleased with where we've gotten. And a lot of that has been, just thanks to really my relationship with Anne, and how we work together to solve problems, and not not wrap our egos in it, but to, really sort of put the business first, and think very clearly and definitively about sort of what is the right thing to do here. And usually we're very much on the same page, which has been
Yeah.
a
No, that's
fantastic
very
experience.
that's that's
Important.
a gift, definitely. I've spoken to quite a few people that haven't had quite the same, but you seem very kind of you know, it, it, that answer mirrored something earlier where, it's not necessarily a mistake. It's just, it's something that happened and you're, happy with
Learn
where
from it.
things have gone. I
Yeah.
feel like that's whether it's a personality type, a way of thinking about life, business that is definitely coming through. Where is Alloy going? Would you ever think about women's health generally and go younger, or, move into, I guess you're already easily moving into longevity as you take women from menopause onwards. But what are you hoping for in the future for Alloy? Are you hoping to sell to a big health system, or what are your ambitions?
My ambition is for Alloy to be a sustainable business that lasts and, serves women for the long term. Whether I'm at the helm or not, I think that it's something that is really important. I think that consumer driven healthcare is the future, actually, where consumers do have more of a say and a choice in what they're getting. And I think that, what we found with insurance and health systems is that it's actually so expensive to just fit into that system that it's like it's broken. So we wanted to create something. We had the opportunity to just create something that's new and not broken. And what the only thing that we're asking is that women um have a little bit of sort of flexibility in how they're receiving the care, how they're communicating with the doctor. It's through messaging, which is how, I speak to my children and my husband generally. So it sort of meets women where they are, and that experience will continue to evolve and improve, and get even sort of more personal and easier to navigate. But I think, we've tried to create something that serves us as women in this life stage. Like, what are we really looking for? Nobody has ever actually asked that question. What do women in midlife need? It's usually, what's best for women in fertility, or
Yeah,
or younger women, or, like, we've always been sort of pushed, like, should we go to younger women? And the fact is that there are 85 million women in the United States alone who are in some stage of perimenopause or
yeah,
menopause right now. And that is a huge unserved market of people who have been
ignore.
dismissed, summarily ignored, told, like, you don't matter. And so we're really focused on that woman. And there are enough of them, and that, like, even if there are more companies or more, more people trying to serve this customer, or this person, like, there still will
Yeah,
never be enough companies to actually meet the gigantic need, because
yeah,
there are fewer and fewer OBGYNs. There are fewer who choose to deliver babies.
yeah,
Forget about menopause, or women, in perimenopause, who don't know what's going on and are, like, trying to find answers. But that is a time consuming sort of process, in a sense. You have to go to a provider who's like, oh, you're 48 and you're having problems sleeping and you're having heart palpitations and you have this new onset of anxiety that, is making it hard for you to drive over bridges and through tunnels. These are real
yeah.
stories that I've heard.
Amazing.
Maybe we should try you on HRT first and see if that solves the problem. And if it doesn't, then we can start doing a cardiac workup, or we can put you on an SSRI or
Yeah,
whatever. But, like, you have to actually look at a woman as a whole person, and think about,
yeah,
how old she is and her life stage, and sort of, put two and two together. And that has not happened up until now, or at least for the last 25 years. And I think that there's a lot more opportunity just to serve her and all
yeah,
of her needs and help her thrive. And then, obviously, I will never say
yeah,
never. There are all kinds, the options are pretty much
yeah,
endless at this point,
yeah,
because it's not being done yet
yeah. And
well
I feel like
for
deepening
anybody.
that relationship over time, there's so many more product and health needs. Yeah, I see that. I can't
Yeah.
believe we've got to almost the end. So move on to
There's a
just some
lot to talk
quick.
about. I can come back.
I would love that. Some more quick fire um, questions. What more frivolous questions. What would be your desert island health and wellness product? I can kind of guess, but what would it be? If
Uh, M4 topical estrogen.
that's for the
All of them. Yeah. The skin health.
all
Yes.
right. I feel
Skin.
like I need to try that. Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
I
best
mean, that's assuming that I already have systemic estrogen, that I have HRT.
That's what I was about to say. I was like, hang
Yeah.
on, the topical versus
No,
the
yeah, I just
oral.
I assume that the HRT is like a
You're
given,
like, I'm
and
never
then
giving up
yeah,
the oral.
never giving that up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh, what best career advice, worst career advice you've ever had?
I've been listening a lot to Scott Galloway, Professor Galloway, and he's said a bunch of times, which I think is really good advice. And actually, this is not advice that I was given, but I think it's great advice, which is lean into what you're good at. And I definitely have seen that with myself as an entrepreneur that, I'm really good at having a big idea, and I have, a huge network of people. I love people. I'm very curious. I'm very chatty. I make and develop and maintain relationships. So I have relationships with people that I've had, for like Gingy, 30
Yeah.
years or more, and lots of people. And so what my strength is, or one of my strengths is, thinking about something and then finding people who are better than me at X, Y, or Z to, to sort of get engaged and do stuff, because I obviously can't do everything and I'm not good at a lot of things. So I think leaning into what you're good at and sort of really finding your strength, that doesn't mean pick something that's easy, that doesn't have challenge. Anything will have challenge, but it just means, think about where you can really add the most value and go for that. And if there's something that is more challenging or that you're interested in, but that you're not that good at, make it a hobby.
That's funny. Um, any, and that's similar. I guess that is I was going to ask about your superpowers that have helped you succeed, but I feel like that's kind of it.
Yeah.
Being able and open to connect with people, being good at that, I think is a superpower as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I think so. My son, actually, at my 50th birthday party, one of my sons made a toast and said that one of the things that he thinks, and this always stuck with me, is that I've taught my kids, to be friendly and open, and that sometimes a step back or to the side is the right way forward, actually. And that,
Mm.
being open about sort of how you move through life is something that I find interesting and I think a lot about. And I don't always follow, I actually usually don't follow the path most traveled,
Okay.
but I think about what's the right way to, what's right for me? Where do I think, the best path forward is, and take that.
Anything you're trying to get better at?
Sleep. I'm
Yeah.
not a very good sleeper. I live in the Netherlands, which I think I don't know if you know,
Yeah.
but I'm a New Yorker who lives in Holland now. I'm married to a Dutch guy, and we lived in New York together for 22 years, and then finally moved here 5 years ago to be closer to his family.
Yeah.
And the serendipity of that was that I was able to continue to build Alloy remotely. It was during COVID and then beyond. So we built the entire company remote. But what it means is that my working hours, which I love, I work Eastern hours. So I start at kind of 3 p.m. local
Gosh.
time, and
Yeah.
I work till 10 or 11. But it means that by the time I'm ready, it's bedtime, I'm still kind of wired. But it gives me a lot of flexibility during the day to do the life things that I need to do, like
Yeah. That's
exercise
good.
and lifting weights. And that has been a huge shift in my whole mindset of like, exercise is something that is,
The number
you
one.
start now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Start now and never stop.
Yeah.
To think about like getting in shape when you're 70 is not really the time to start, but now is really the time to start. And it's not about getting skinny or being as little as possible, or, taking up as little space as possible. It's actually getting as strong as you possibly can to protect yourself for the next 50 years. And
Yeah. Amazing.
yeah.
What vitamins or supplements do you take, if any?
I take the Alloy Symbiotic, which is every night, which is, I also eat a lot of fermented foods, but I'm really into the microbiome and gut
Yeah.
health. I'm taking creatine, lately. It makes me a little bit nauseous sometimes, so I'm not that good at being consistent, but I read a lot about it and think that that's a really good one. And I'm trying to get as much protein in as possible, as we all are. But I don't take that many supplements, to
Okay.
be honest. I take magnesium at night. Actually, that's been helping me
To help
with
see.
my sleep. Yeah.
What's the scammiest health trend you've seen recently?
Scammiest.
Yeah. What's you're like, that's ridiculous on TikTok or, influencers trying to sell?
I'm not on TikTok very much.
Yeah,
I'm on Instagram.
I mean,
Yeah. What I'm interested in is peptides,
yeah,
but they're not studied. They're not,
yeah.
and GLP-1s obviously, but sort of all of these other
All the
peptides.
other new
And
crazy ones coming.
yeah, yeah, that apparently seems to be coming like directly from Chinese labs. And so I
Yes.
think that I'm sad about it actually, because I have a feeling that there's a lot of benefit actually that could come from that, but because of the misinformation and sort of lack of, um, there won't be an FDA study most like, or, sort of an FDA approved version of these things because, they're cheap to make and so not that profitable for pharmaceutical companies, and it's, to do the research and get patents and stuff like that. And so I think there will be a lot of like gray area stuff coming up that feels and sounds
Yeah.
exciting, but we won't really have enough evidence to make a clear
Yeah.
determination on safety and stuff. So
Yeah.
that's a bummer.
Last
But yeah.
question. Last question. Who are you, could be or what are you professionally jealous of?
Um, it's a great question. I think I don't love I try to not be jealous as a person. So
Yeah.
I like to find inspiration and
Admire.
ideas, yeah,
Yeah.
admiration in other people. I've been thinking a lot about recently Estee Lauder,
Mhm.
actually, who really started mixing face creams at her kitchen table with her uncle, who is a chemist, and learning the science by herself. And I think it's really admirable that, especially at the time that she was doing that, I know how hard it is to be a female entrepreneur now in 2026, 20, or the 2020s.
Yeah.
So when she was doing that to sort of get the to build something so extraordinary through the curiosity and care and really wanting to kind of create something for herself and other women in the same way that we are doing, is I think really sort of very inspirational. And the way that the company then went on to, through leaders like Evelyn Lauder, support causes like breast cancer and
Yeah.
ovarian cancer and other things, like is definitely admirable. But there are a lot of people that what I like to do is sort of pick and choose from, things that I see and um, then chart my own path.
Amazing.
I'm not
Thank
that much of
you.
a rule follower all the time.
Thank you so much. It was so interesting. I really feel like I could have asked so many more questions. But thank you. I would love to connect another time. I have a female founder I would love to pick your brain about. And it's actually an amazing female incontinence, very disruptive
Huh.
new product. But anyway, firstly,
Female incontinence. I know all about it. Way
yeah,
too
I know.
much.
I'm going to email you about that, but I have to
That
just
sounds great.
thank people for listening. Please take a look at other episodes we've done. You can find them on Spotify, Apple, YouTube. Get in touch if you have any questions, feedback, or people that you'd like featured. Thank you to everyone helping, and hopefully I'll see you again soon.